Jake Morrison looked out the small window of his transport ship as it approached the massive space station floating near the gas giant. The station was bigger than any city on Earth, and it glowed with strange lights that hurt his eyes when he stared too long. This was the Galactic Council Station, and he was about to make history as the first human ambassador to meet the alien rulers of the galaxy. The journey from Earth had taken 3 months, even with their fastest ship. Jake carried with him a silver briefcase that contained everything humanity wanted to share with the galaxy. Inside were detailed reports about Earth's technology, culture, art, and science. There were also formal requests for trade agreements and membership in the Galactic Council. Jake hoped this meeting would change everything for humanity. Dr. Lisa Parker sat across from him reviewing her notes for the 100th time. She was the best scientist Earth had, and her job was to help Jake understand the alien technology and customs they would encounter. Lisa had spent years studying the few alien artifacts that ships had found floating in space. She knew more about alien science than anyone else on Earth, but she still felt nervous about what they might face. The transport ship docked with a loud clang that echoed through the metal halls. Jake straightened his dark blue diplomatic uniform and picked up his briefcase. The airlock opened with a hiss, and he stepped into the alien station for the first time. The air tasted different and smelled like metal and something else he could not identify. The gravity felt lighter than Earth normal, and it took him a moment to adjust his walking. A tall, crystalline being waited for them in the docking bay. Its body looked like it was made of clear blue glass that sparkled under the station lights. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with static from an old radio. Jake activated his translation device and listened as the words became clear English. "I am Zendar of the Vorthak. You are the human delegation. Follow me to the council chambers." The crystal being turned and walked away without waiting for a response. Jake and Lisa hurried to keep up as they moved through corridors filled with strange sights and sounds. The walls of the station were covered in symbols that shifted and changed as they walked past them. Other aliens moved through the halls going about their business. Jake saw insect-like creatures with 4 arms and large compound eyes. There were beings that looked like they were made of water held in transparent suits. Some aliens glowed with their own light and floated instead of walking. A few looked like giant lizards wearing elaborate robes and jewelry. They entered a huge chamber with a dome ceiling that showed the stars and planets outside. 5 massive seats were arranged in a circle, and each one held a different type of alien. Jake recognized them from the briefings he had studied. These were the 5 species that ruled the Galactic Council and had controlled this part of space for over 10,000 years. Zendar gestured for Jake to stand in the center of the circle. Lisa took a position behind him with her recording devices ready. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of alien machines and the soft breathing sounds from the various species present. "Humans," said a voice that sounded like rushing water. Jake looked up to see one of the aquatic Nereians speaking through its translation system. "You have traveled far to reach us. Your species is young, and your civilization has barely learned to leave your home planet. Why do you seek membership in our ancient council?" Jake opened his briefcase and pulled out the formal documents Earth had prepared. He had practiced this speech 1,000 times, but his mouth felt dry as he began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council, humanity comes before you in peace and friendship. We offer our knowledge, our creativity, and our desire to learn from the wisdom of older civilizations." The insectoid Zephyrian clicked its mandibles together in what Jake hoped was not a threatening gesture. "Your species has a violent history. You fight wars among your own kind. You destroy your environment for short-term gains. Why should we trust beings who cannot even live in harmony with themselves?" Jake felt sweat forming on his forehead despite the cool air in the chamber. "Humans have made mistakes in our past, but we have learned from them. Our conflicts have taught us the value of peace. Our struggles with our environment have made us better scientists and engineers. We believe our experiences, both good and bad, give us unique perspectives that could benefit the galaxy. The energy being called a luminal pulsed with different colors as it spoke in a voice like singing electricity. Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are brief. Your understanding of the universe is limited. What could such a young species possibly offer to civilizations that have existed since before your star was formed? Lisa stepped forward and activated a small device that projected images into the air above Jake's head. The images showed human art, music, literature, and scientific discoveries. "We offer something that long-lived species often lose," Jake said, finding his confidence again. "We offer innovation, fresh ideas, and the ability to adapt quickly to new situations. Humans may live short lives, but we make the most of every moment." The reptilian Scaroth leader leaned forward in its massive chair, its yellow eyes studying Jake carefully. "These are pretty words, human ambassador, but words are easy to speak. Actions reveal truth. We will consider your request, but do not expect quick answers. The council moves slowly and carefully. You will remain here as our guests while we deliberate." Jake bowed respectfully to each of the 5 council members. "We are honored by your consideration and grateful for your hospitality." As guards escorted them to their assigned quarters, Jake felt hopeful that humanity had made a good first impression. He had no way of knowing that the council had already made their decision about humanity's future long before he ever arrived at the station. Jake Morrison woke up in his assigned quarters on the 3rd day of negotiations, feeling uneasy about something he could not quite identify. The room was comfortable enough with a bed, desk, and a small viewing window that showed the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. The artificial gravity and air mixture had been adjusted to match Earth conditions, but something still felt wrong. During breakfast with Lisa Parker in their shared common area, Jake mentioned his concerns. "Have you noticed anything strange about their questions yesterday?" he asked, while picking at the bland but nutritious food the station provided. Lisa looked up from her tablet where she had been reviewing her notes from the previous day's session. "Now that you mention it, yes," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "They keep asking about Earth's military capabilities and defensive systems. Yesterday, Zendar wanted detailed information about our orbital platforms and space-based weapons. That seems odd for species interested in trade agreements." Jake nodded as he remembered the questioning session. The council members had spent hours asking about Earth's population centers, industrial capacity, and military organization. When he tried to steer the conversation toward cultural exchange or scientific cooperation, they always brought it back to humanity's capacity for warfare and defense. "They also asked about our faster-than-light communication systems," Lisa continued, keeping her voice low. "They wanted to know how quickly we could coordinate responses across our solar system. Those are not the kind of questions you ask potential trading partners." That afternoon during the scheduled negotiation session, Jake decided to test his growing suspicions. When the Scaroth representative Raxthul asked about Earth's deep space monitoring stations, Jake gave a deliberately vague answer and watched the alien's reaction carefully. The reptilian being's pupils dilated slightly and its clawed hands gripped the arms of its chair more tightly. "Surely the human military maintains extensive surveillance of approaching ships," Raxthul pressed, its forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "How else would you detect potential threats to your home world?" Jake smiled diplomatically and spread his hands. "We prefer to focus on peaceful applications of our technology. Our deep space arrays are primarily used for scientific research and exploration." This was not entirely true, but Jake wanted to see how the council members would react to the idea that Earth might be less defended than they assumed. The 5 council members exchanged glances that lasted just a moment too long. Jake caught the look that passed between Zendar and the Narian representative. It was the kind of look that people shared when they knew something others did not. After the session ended, Jake and Lisa returned to their quarters to find that small items had been moved. Lisa's tablet had been repositioned on her desk, and Jake's personal belongings were arranged slightly differently than he had left them. Someone had been searching their rooms while they were in the council chambers. "We need to be very careful about what we say and do from now on," Lisa whispered to Jake as they prepared for dinner. "I think our quarters are under surveillance." That evening, Lisa made a discovery that confirmed their worst fears. While running a routine diagnostic on her scientific equipment, she detected unusual energy signatures coming from the walls of their quarters. Hidden sensors were monitoring everything they did and said. Even more disturbing, she found evidence of communication jamming technology that would prevent them from sending messages back to Earth. "Jake, we have a serious problem," she said, showing him the readings on her handheld scanner. "They have been watching us constantly since we arrived. And look at this." She pointed to another display that showed electromagnetic interference patterns. "They are blocking all outgoing transmissions. We cannot contact Earth even if we wanted to." Jake felt a cold fear settle in his stomach as the pieces began to fall into place. The Council's questions about Earth's defenses, the surveillance of their quarters, the communication jamming, and the way the alien representatives acted like they already knew more about humanity than they were admitting. The next morning brought another troubling development. Commander Raxthul arrived at their quarters with a squad of armored guards. The Skaroth warrior was over 7 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes that seemed to see everything. His guards carried weapons that hummed with energy and wore armor that looked far more advanced than anything humans had developed. "Human ambassador," Raxthul said in his deep, gravelly voice, "the Council requires additional information for their deliberations. You will accompany us to a secure briefing room where we can discuss these matters in detail." Jake and Lisa exchanged worried glances, but had no choice except to follow the guards through the station corridors. The secure briefing room turned out to be a small chamber with no windows and only one entrance. The walls were lined with the same crystalline material that made up Zendar's body, and they pulsed with a faint blue light. Inside the room, Zendar waited with the other council members appearing as holographic projections. The crystal being's form seemed brighter and more angular than before, as if it was becoming more crystalline under stress or excitement. "Sit down, humans," Zendar commanded in its chiming voice. "It is time for complete honesty between us. We know much more about your species than you realize. We have been observing Earth for over 50 of your years." Jake felt his blood turn cold as the implications hit him. 50 years? But first contact only happened 6 months ago when we detected your probe signals, the luminal energy being pulsed, with what might have been amusement. "You detected what we allowed you to detect. Our technology is far beyond your current understanding. We have been studying your species, your military capabilities, your expansion patterns, and your potential threat level for decades." Lisa leaned forward in her chair, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Why would you study us in secret? What threat could humanity possibly pose to civilizations as advanced as yours?" The Narian representative answered in its flowing, water voice. "Young species often develop in unpredictable ways. Some become peaceful partners in the galactic community. Others become aggressive expansionist threats that must be contained before they can destabilize entire sectors of space." Raxthul stepped closer to their table, his claws clicking against the metal surface. "Your species shows all the warning. Signs of aggressive expansion. You fight constantly among yourselves. You consume resources rapidly. You adapt and evolve your technology at dangerous speeds. Most concerning of all, you reproduce and spread faster than any species we have encountered." Jake stood up despite the presence of the armed guards. "Are you saying that the Council views humanity as a threat simply because we are young and adaptable?" Zendar's crystalline form brightened until it was almost painful to look at directly. "We are saying that the Galactic Council has maintained peace and stability for 10,000 years by preventing dangerous species from reaching technological maturity. Some species prove they can be trusted with advanced technology. Others prove they cannot. The room fell silent, except for the humming of alien machinery and the sound of Jake's heart beating loud enough that he was sure everyone could hear it. He finally understood what was happening and why they had really been brought to the council station. This was not a diplomatic mission to establish trade relations. This was a test that humanity had already failed. Jake Morrison stood in the center of the council chamber with energy shackles around his wrists and ankles. The restraints buzzed with alien technology that made his skin tingle and prevented any sudden movements. Lisa Parker sat in the observer section behind a force field barrier, her face pale with shock and fear as she watched the proceedings unfold. Prime Crystal Zendar rose from its massive chair and began to speak in the formal tone reserved for official council business. Human designation Jake Morrison, you stand accused before the Galactic Council of Species-Level Sedition and representing a civilization that poses an immediate threat to galactic stability and peace. The trial had begun 3 hours ago, and Jake quickly realized it was nothing more than a performance for the official records. The 5 council species had clearly made their decision long before he ever arrived at the station. Every question was designed to support their predetermined conclusion that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to develop further. The evidence shows, continued the Narian representative in its flowing water voice, that the human species exhibits classic patterns of aggressive expansion, resource depletion, and technological development that historically leads to galactic destabilization. In the past 3,000 years, the Council has encountered 47 species with similar characteristics. Of those, 44 required intervention to prevent galactic conflict. Jake tried to interrupt, but the energy shackles tightened around his throat when he attempted to speak. Raxathul, the Scaroth commander, gestured with one clawed hand, and the restraints loosened just enough to allow speech. What happened to those 44 species? Jake asked, though he already feared he knew the answer. The luminol energy being pulsed with cold blue light as it responded. They were relocated to designated worlds where they could develop safely without threatening other civilizations. Those who resisted relocation were contained through more permanent measures. Jake felt his stomach drop as he understood the euphemism. Permanent measures meant extinction. The Galactic Council had been systematically destroying young civilizations for thousands of years under the guise of maintaining peace and stability. You are nothing more than cosmic bullies, Jake said, his fear transforming into anger. You eliminate anyone who might challenge your control over the galaxy. How many, millions of beings have you murdered to protect your ancient empire? Zendar's crystalline form brightened with what Jake had learned to recognize as anger or displeasure. We are the guardians of galactic civilization. Young species like yours lack the wisdom and patience necessary for true galactic citizenship. Your short lifespans make you reckless. Your rapid reproduction makes you expansionist. Your adaptability makes you unpredictable and therefore dangerous. The insectoid Zephyrian clicked its mandibles together in a rhythmic pattern before speaking. The decision of this council is final. The human species designation Jake Morrison is found guilty of representing a civilization that poses an unacceptable threat to galactic peace. The sentence is immediate termination, followed by implementation of containment protocols for the human home world. Jake looked back at Lisa and saw tears streaming down her face. She had understood the implications just as clearly as he had. This was not just his execution, but the death sentence for all of humanity. The Council planned to destroy Earth and every human colony to prevent their species from becoming a future threat. I have one final request, Jake said, straightening his shoulders and trying to maintain his dignity in these last moments. Allow me to send a message to my people. Let them know what happened here and why. The 5 council members conferred briefly before Zendar responded. Your final words will be recorded and transmitted throughout Council space as a warning to other developing species. Speak." Jake looked directly into the recording devices and spoke clearly. "My name is Jake Morrison, Human Ambassador to the Galactic Council. I came here seeking peace and friendship between our peoples. Instead, I found an ancient tyranny that maintains its power by murdering anyone who might challenge them. The Council plans to destroy Earth and all human colonies because they fear our potential. To my people, remember who we are and what we stand for. Do not let our deaths be meaningless." Rax Thul stepped forward with a weapon that glowed with deadly energy. The sentence will now be carried out. The weapon fired with a sound like breaking glass, and Jake Morrison ceased to exist. On Earth, General Frank Hayes sat in the Pentagon's Xenological Command Center monitoring the diplomatic mission through quantum entanglement communicators that the Council did not know existed. He had been watching the proceedings with growing alarm and had already begun preliminary activation sequences for humanity's most secret defensive measures. When Jake's execution was confirmed and all communication with the diplomatic team went silent, Hayes took a deep breath and spoke the words he had hoped never to say. "Authorization Hayes Alpha 77. Confirm activation of Annihilation Protocol. All stations acknowledge." Across the solar system, hidden installations that had been dormant for decades suddenly came to life. On Mars, massive weapons systems, disguised as mining equipment, began charging their power cores. On Europa and Titan, military bases that officially did not exist started launching ships that had never appeared on any public registry. Dr. Susan Blake had been waiting in the secure bunker beneath the Pentagon for this moment ever since she first discovered evidence of the Council's systematic genocide 20 years ago. Her archaeological research on dead civilizations throughout the galaxy had revealed the truth that the Council was not a benevolent organization, but a galactic empire that eliminated all potential rivals. "General Hayes," she said as alarms began, sounding throughout the command center, "the xenoarchaeological evidence suggests the Council has been operating this way for at least 10,000 years. They have destroyed hundreds of civilizations and will not expect any serious resistance from us." Hayes nodded grimly as reports began flooding in from secret installations throughout human space. "That is exactly what we are counting on, Doctor. The Council believes they know everything about humanity because they have been watching us for 50 years. They have no idea what we have been preparing for the past 20. Admiral Ryan Cole's voice crackled over the secure communication system from his hidden command ship beyond Pluto's orbit. "General, the Sol Defense Fleet is fully operational and awaiting orders. All ships report ready for immediate deployment." Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the true extent of humanity's military preparations. The Council believed Earth had approximately 100 military ships. The actual number was over 3,000 vessels equipped with technology reverse-engineered from alien artifacts and powered by new energy sources the Council had never encountered. "Admiral Cole, implement Phase 1 of the Annihilation Protocol. Begin systematic targeting of all Council installations within 50 light-years of Earth. Dr. Blake, activate the Deep Space Communication Network and send the recall signal to all human colonies and exploration vessels." As orders flowed out from the Pentagon Command Center, humanity began to reveal its true nature for the first time. The Council had made one critical error in their assessment. They assumed that because humans lived short lives and fought among themselves, they would be easy to defeat when the time came. They had not considered that a species forged by constant conflict and shaped by the knowledge of their own mortality might be the most dangerous enemy they had ever faced. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity had spent the last 20 years preparing for this moment, and why the execution of one human ambassador would mark the beginning of the end for the Galactic Council's 10,000-year reign. Admiral Ryan Cole stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display show the true scope of humanity's hidden military might for the first time. The bridge hummed with activity as officers coordinated the largest military operation in human history. What the Galactic Council believed to be a small primitive fleet was revealing itself to be something far more dangerous. "Admiral, all Phase 1 targets have been identified and locked," reported Captain Helen White from her position at the tactical station. "We have confirmed locations of 17 Council military installations within our operational range. Estimated enemy strength is approximately 400 ships of various classes." Cole nodded as he studied the holographic display floating above the command table. Red markers indicated Council positions, while blue markers showed human forces moving into attack positions. The numbers looked almost even, but Cole knew the Council had no idea what they were really facing. "Signal all ships to begin final approach. Maintain communication silence until we reach attack positions. The Council still believes we are a primitive species with limited technology. Let us use that assumption against them." On Mars, Colonel Steve Torres supervised the activation of weapons systems that had been disguised as industrial mining equipment for over a decade. The massive railgun batteries hidden beneath the planet's surface began charging their magnetic coils while their targeting computers locked onto Council ships patrolling the outer solar system. "Base Command, this is Mars Defense Grid," Torres reported into his headset. "All primary batteries are online and ready for engagement. We have 15 enemy contacts within range, and they appear to be maintaining standard patrol patterns. The Council ships had no idea they were being watched by targeting systems far more advanced than anything they had encountered from other young species. Human engineers had spent years reverse engineering alien technology and improving upon it with human innovation and creativity. Dr. Nancy Green watched from the secure laboratory beneath Titan's surface as her life's work finally reached its moment of truth. She had been studying alien psychology and combat tactics for 15 years, analyzing every piece of data Earth's secret intelligence network had gathered about Council military operations. "The key advantage we have," she explained to the assembled military commanders via secure video link, "is that the Council species are individually long-lived and think in terms of centuries rather than years. Their military tactics have not changed significantly in over 1,000 years because they see no need for rapid adaptation." General Hayes nodded from his position in the Pentagon Command Center. "While humans adapt and change tactics within days or weeks if necessary, our short lifespans force us to innovate constantly, while their long lifespans make them complacent. The communication systems throughout human space suddenly came alive with encrypted messages traveling faster than light through quantum entanglement networks the Council had never detected. Every human colony, mining station, research outpost, and exploration vessel received the same message simultaneously. Annihilation protocol is now active. All units report status and prepare for immediate deployment." The response was overwhelming. From mining asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter came reports of hidden weapon platforms going online. Deep space monitoring stations revealed themselves to be heavily armed fortress ships. Even civilian transport vessels activated concealed military systems and began moving toward predetermined rally points. Captain Danny Price commanded one of humanity's most secret weapons, a stealth ship that had been observing Council operations from the shadows for over 2 years. His vessel looked like a standard cargo hauler but was actually packed with advanced sensors, weapons, and a crew of specially trained commandos. "Command, this is Ghost Rider," Price reported from his position near the Council station where Jake Morrison had been executed. "I have been monitoring enemy communications, and they are showing signs of increased alert status. They know something is happening, but they do not yet understand the scope of what they are facing." On Earth's moon, massive doors that had been sealed for decades finally opened to reveal humanity's most closely guarded secret. The Luna shipyards had been producing military vessels in complete secrecy for over 20 years. Ships that officially did not exist began launching from hidden bays carved deep into the lunar surface. Admiral Cole watched in satisfaction as his fleet display updated with new contacts. What had started as 300 ships was now showing over 2,000 vessels of various types, all moving into attack formations. The Council was about to discover that humanity's true military strength was nearly 10 times larger than their intelligence estimates. "Admiral, we are receiving reports from deep space reconnaissance units," reported his communications officer. "Enemy reinforcements are being dispatched from Council worlds throughout this sector. Estimated time to arrival is 18 hours. Cole smiled grimly. 18 hours was more than enough time for what humanity had planned. The Council was reacting exactly as Dr. Green's psychological profiles had predicted. They were sending reinforcements to deal with what they assumed was a limited uprising by a primitive species. Signal all units to implement Phase 2. Begin simultaneous attacks on all Council installations. Prioritize their communication arrays and command centers. We want them blind and unable to coordinate their response. Throughout the solar system, human forces that had been hidden in plain sight for decades finally revealed their true purpose. Asteroid mining operations launched swarms of automated attack drones. Scientific research stations deployed experimental weapons that used technologies the Council had never encountered. Even the space elevators connecting Earth to orbital platforms were revealed to have military applications. The first Council patrol ship to detect unusual activity was a Scaroth cruiser monitoring the outer edges of the solar system. Its reptilian crew had been expecting routine surveillance reports when their sensors suddenly detected massive energy signatures from previously unknown sources. "Commander Raxavel," the ship's sensor operator reported in the harsh Scaroth language, "we are detecting multiple contacts approaching from various vectors. Energy signatures do not match known human technology." Before the commander could respond, the ship's hull was pierced by projectiles traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The railgun rounds from Mars had covered the distance between planets in less than an hour and struck with the force of nuclear weapons. The Scaroth cruiser ceased to exist in a flash of superheated plasma. Similar attacks began occurring throughout Council space as humanity's true reach was revealed. Ships that had been cataloged as civilian transport suddenly deployed weapon systems and began attacking Council installations. Mining facilities that were supposed to be harmless industrial operations revealed themselves to be heavily fortified military bases. The Galactic Council's carefully maintained intelligence picture of humanity crumbled within the first few hours of conflict. Every assumption they had made about human capabilities, technology, and military strength proved to be completely wrong. The species they had planned to easily eliminate was instead proving to be the most dangerous enemy they had encountered in their 10,000-year history. Admiral Cole received reports from across human space as the initial phase of the operation unfolded. Council forces were reeling from the surprise attacks and struggling to understand what they were facing. Their standard tactics and strategies were proving ineffective against human innovation and adaptability. "Admiral, Phase 2 objectives have been achieved," Captain White reported. "Council communication networks in this sector have been disrupted and their remaining forces appear to be falling back to defensive positions." Cole nodded as he watched the tactical display update with new information. The sleeping giant of humanity had finally awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Council had made the fatal error of underestimating a species that had been preparing for this war since the day they first learned they were not alone in the universe. Commander Steve Torres led his assault team through the corridors of the captured Council station with a grim determination that shocked the alien defenders. The station had been designed to withstand siege warfare lasting months or even years. But the human boarding parties had breached the outer defenses in less than 6 hours, using tactics the Council had never encountered. The key difference was not superior technology, but superior adaptability. When the first wave of human commandos encountered energy barriers that stopped their advance, they immediately switched to different approaches. Some teams used explosives to blast through walls and attack from unexpected directions. Others used stealth technology to bypass the barriers entirely. Still others simply waited for the barriers to cycle down and then rushed through with overwhelming speed. "Torres to all units," he spoke into his communication device while his team advanced toward the station's command center. "Remember the psychological warfare protocols. We want the survivors to spread word about what happens when you execute human ambassadors." The Council defenders were experiencing something they had never faced before. Most species fought in predictable patterns based on their biology and culture. The crystalline Vorthak used precise geometric formations. The aquatic Nereians preferred flowing movements that mimicked water currents. The insectoid Zephyrians attacked in organized swarms, with each individual knowing its exact role. Humans fought like they had nothing left to lose because in many ways they did not. Every human soldier knew that if they failed, Earth and all human colonies would be destroyed. This knowledge did not make them reckless, but instead gave them a desperate creativity that terrified their enemies. Captain Helen White commanded the Y human fleet elements that had surrounded 3 Council worlds simultaneously. Her ships were not trying to destroy the planets, but instead were demonstrating that humanity could reach the heart of Council territory whenever they chose. The psychological impact was devastating. "Captain, we are receiving surrender requests from the orbital platforms around Zephyr Prime," her communications officer reported. "They are requesting terms for honorable withdrawal." White studied the tactical display showing Council ships fleeing from their own home system. The ancient defensive networks that had protected these worlds for thousands of years were proving useless against human tactics that changed faster than the defenders could adapt. "Grant them safe passage, but monitor their movements. We want them to report back to their leaders about what they witnessed here." On the hidden fortress world of New Geneva, Dr. Nancy Green analyzed the incoming battle reports with growing excitement. Her theories about human psychological advantages were being proven correct in the most dramatic way possible. The Council species were reacting exactly as she had predicted they would when faced with an enemy that fought unlike anything in their experience. "General Hayes," she reported via secure communication to Earth, "the enemy is showing classic signs of tactical paralysis. They are trained to fight opponents who use consistent strategies over long periods of time. Our ability to change tactics multiple times within a single engagement is completely outside their understanding of warfare." The human approach to combat reflected their evolution on a dangerous world where survival required constant adaptation. While the Council species had evolved on stable worlds with predictable threats, humans had been shaped by ice ages, volcanic eruptions, climate changes, and countless other challenges that rewarded flexibility over specialization. Colonel Danny Price and his commando units were demonstrating this principle in the most direct way possible. When they encountered Scaroth warriors in heavy armor, they immediately switched from direct assault to hit-and-run tactics that used the reptilian aliens' slow reaction times against them. When they faced luminal energy beings, they deployed electromagnetic weapons designed specifically to disrupt their coherent energy patterns. "The key to understanding human military doctrine," Dr. Green explained to the assembled military commanders, "is that we do not have a single military doctrine. We adapt our approach to each situation and each enemy. The Council species assume there must be some underlying pattern they can identify and counter, but the pattern is constant change." Admiral Ryan Cole was coordinating the largest space battle in galactic history from his flagship positioned beyond the Council's ability to detect. His fleet had grown to over 4,000 ships as hidden human vessels emerged from concealment throughout the galaxy. Many of these ships had been disguised as civilian craft for years while secretly gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. "Admiral, we are receiving reports from all sectors," his chief of staff reported. "Council forces are retreating from 17 star systems and requesting emergency reinforcements from their core worlds." Their casualty reports suggest they are facing an enemy force at least 10 times larger than their intelligence estimates indicated. Cole nodded with satisfaction. The Council's greatest weakness was their reliance on predictable information gathering. They had studied humanity for 50 years using conventional surveillance methods and had completely missed the secret military buildup that had been happening for the past 20 years. The human strategy was based on a simple principle that Dr. Green had identified early in her research. Ancient civilizations became ancient by avoiding unnecessary risks and maintaining stable systems that worked over long periods of time. This made them extremely powerful, but also extremely vulnerable to opponents who could force rapid change upon them. Captain Karen Lewis led the human task force that was striking directly at the heart of Council power. Her ships were attacking the central communication hub that coordinated military operations across the galaxy. The facility was supposed to be impregnable, but human engineers had identified weaknesses in its design by studying similar structures that had been built by extinct civilizations. "Target the quantum resonance chambers," Lewis ordered as her ships moved into attack position. "Those crystals cannot be replaced quickly, and without them, the entire network will collapse." The attack succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. The Council's galaxy-spanning communication network went silent as human weapons destroyed systems that had been operating continuously for over 3,000 years. Suddenly, the ancient alliance found itself unable to coordinate responses across the vast distances of space. On Earth, General Hayes watched the tactical displays with amazement as human forces achieved victory after victory using strategies that seemed impossible to conventional military thinking. The key was that humans did not fight like a single species with unified tactics, but like dozens of different approaches, all working toward the same goal. "Dr. Green, your psychological profiles have been proven accurate beyond our expectations," Hayes said as reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. "The Council cannot adapt to our methods because they assume we must be following some sort of logical strategic plan." Green smiled as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "The beautiful irony is that we are following a logical plan. The plan is to never let them figure out what our plan is. Every time they think they understand our approach, we change it completely." The Council forces were beginning to experience something that none of their species had felt in thousands of years. They were afraid. The humans were not just winning battles, but were doing so in ways that suggested capabilities far beyond what any young species should possess. Prime Crystal Zendar received reports from across Council space describing human tactics that seemed to border on the impossible. Ships that fought like they were expendable even though they were obviously expensive to build. Soldiers who adapted their strategies mid-battle in response to changing conditions. Commanders who seemed to anticipate Council responses before the Council leaders themselves knew what they would do. "How is this possible?" Zendar asked the assembled Council in emergency session. "Our intelligence indicated this species had barely achieved interstellar flight capability. How can they be defeating military forces that have maintained galactic peace for 10 millennia?" The answer was becoming clear to some of the more perceptive Council members. They had not been fighting a primitive species that was struggling to survive. They had been fighting a species that had been actively preparing for galactic warfare since the day they first suspected they were not alone in the universe. The execution of Jake Morrison had not triggered a desperate last stand, but had instead activated a carefully planned campaign that had been decades in the making. Fleet Admiral Karen Lewis stood on the bridge of her flagship as it emerged from faster-than-light travel in the home system of the Vorthak. The crystalline beings had ruled the Galactic Council for over 4,000 years, and their world was protected by defensive systems that had never been breached. Today, that would change. "Admiral, all task forces report ready for final phase operations," her tactical officer announced. "We have simultaneous arrival at all 5 Council homeworlds confirmed. Enemy defensive fleets are moving to intercept, but they appear confused by our approach vectors." Lewis nodded as she watched the holographic display show human forces arriving. in the most heavily defended systems in the galaxy. The Council had expected humanity to attack military targets and industrial centers. Instead, the humans were demonstrating their ability to strike at the very heart of Council civilization itself. The strategy was not to destroy these ancient worlds, but to prove that humanity could reach them whenever they chose. The psychological impact was far more devastating than any physical attack could have been. For the first time in their recorded history, the Council species were experiencing what it felt like to be vulnerable. Prime Crystal Zendar watched from the command center deep beneath the surface of Vorthak Prime as human ships swept aside defensive fleets that had protected their world for millennia. The crystalline being's form was flickering with colors that indicated extreme stress as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "This is impossible," Zendar transmitted to the other Council members. "Our intelligence reports indicated that humanity possessed approximately 100 military vessels. We are now detecting over 5,000 human ships operating simultaneously across 17 different star systems." The Narian leader responded from its aquatic home world where human forces were demonstrating similar capabilities. "Our assumptions about this species have been completely incorrect. They have been preparing for galactic warfare since before our first contact with them. Every piece of intelligence we gathered was carefully managed to hide their true capabilities." On Earth, General Frank Hayes coordinated the final phase of Operation Annihilation from the Pentagon Command Center. The operation had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections, but he knew the real victory was not military, but psychological. The Council's greatest weapon had always been the fear they inspired in younger species. That fear was now broken forever. "Dr. Blake, what is the status of our archaeological teams?" Hayes asked the xenoarchaeologist who had first discovered evidence of the Council's systematic genocide. "General, our forces have secured the Council's historical archives on 3 different worlds," Dr. Susan Blake reported with excitement in her voice. "We now have complete records of their operations going back over 8,000 years. The evidence of systematic extermination of young civilizations is overwhelming. This information would be crucial for the post-war period. Humanity needed to prove to the galaxy that the Council had been the real threat to galactic peace, not the young species they had been destroying for thousands of years." Commander Steve Torres led the human forces that had captured the Council's central military command station. The facility had been considered impregnable, but human boarding parties had taken it in less than 12 hours, using tactics that the alien defenders simply could not counter. "Command, this is Torres," he reported while standing in the station's main control room. "We have secured the enemy's primary military coordination center. Their command staff is requesting terms for surrender. The surrender negotiations were brief because humanity's terms were non-negotiable. The Galactic Council would be dissolved and replaced with a new federation that included representation for all species in the galaxy. The systematic suppression and elimination of young civilizations would end immediately. Most importantly, humanity would have a permanent seat on any future galactic governing body. Admiral Ryan Cole received the surrender of the Scaroth home fleet as their massive warships powered down their weapons and accepted human boarding parties. The reptilian warriors who had seemed so fearsome just days before now appeared broken and defeated as they struggled to understand how their ancient military traditions had proven useless against human adaptability. Admiral Cole to all human forces, he broadcast across the secure communication network. Phase 3. Objectives have been achieved. The Council's military resistance has collapsed, and they are requesting terms for general surrender. The speed of the Council's defeat shocked even the human military leaders who had planned the operation. Dr. Nancy Green's psychological analysis had predicted that the ancient alliance would crumble quickly once their fundamental assumptions about warfare were proven wrong. But the reality exceeded even her projections. Captain Helen White oversaw the human occupation of the Council station, where Jake Morrison had been executed just 1 week earlier. The irony was not lost on anyone that the place where humanity's first ambassador had died was now the headquarters for negotiations that would reshape the entire galaxy. "Captain, we have located Dr. Lisa Parker," one of her officers reported. "She was being held in the station's detention center and appears to be in good health despite her captivity." Lisa Parker was the sole survivor of the original diplomatic mission, and her testimony would be crucial evidence of the Council's crimes. When she was brought to the Human Command Center, her first words were about Jake Morrison's final message. "He told them that humans would not let his death be meaningless," she said with tears in her eyes. Jake knew this would happen. He knew humanity would make them pay for their arrogance. The final negotiations took place in the same chamber where Jake Morrison had been executed. The 5 council species sat in their ancient seats, but now they were the ones facing judgment. The tables had turned completely, and the hunters had become the hunted. General Hayes arrived from Earth to personally oversee the surrender ceremony. As he stood where Jake Morrison had died, he read the terms that would govern the galaxy's future. The Galactic Council's 10,000-year reign was officially ended. In its place would be a new galactic federation with equal representation for all species. "The age of ancient species ruling over younger ones is finished," Hayes announced to representatives from across the galaxy who had gathered to witness this historic moment. "From this day forward, the galaxy will be governed by the principle that all intelligent life has the right to develop and expand without interference from those who came before." The council members signed the surrender documents with obvious reluctance, but they had no choice. Their military forces were scattered and defeated. Their home worlds were occupied by human forces. Most importantly, their reputation for invincibility was shattered beyond repair. Prime Crystal Zendar spoke for the council one final time. "We underestimated your species completely. We assumed that your short lifespans and aggressive nature made you inferior to our ancient wisdom. We now understand that these same qualities made you the most dangerous enemy we could have faced. Dr." Green smiled as she listened to the alien leader's words. "The greatest irony is that you were partially correct about us. Humans are aggressive, and we do live short lives compared to your species. But you failed to understand that these traits, combined with our adaptability and creativity, make us something you had never encountered before." As the surrender ceremony concluded, and human forces began the process of establishing the new galactic order, the galaxy learned a lesson that would be remembered for thousands of years to come. Ancient civilizations might have wisdom and experience, but they could still be defeated by young species who had something the ancients had lost long ago: the desperate creativity that comes from knowing that every moment might be your last. Thus, execution of Ambassador Jake Morrison had been intended to send a message to humanity about the price of challenging the established order. Instead, it had triggered a response that ended the Galactic Council's rule and established humanity as the newest major power in galactic politics. The species that had been dismissed as too young and primitive to matter had proven that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. From the ashes of the old order rose a new galaxy, where young civilizations would have the chance to develop and grow without fear of systematic extermination. The price of underestimating humanity had been the complete transformation of galactic civilization itself.